I'm here today with Paul Foss for a new series in our Clean Tech Talk podcast channel and series. Paul and I are going to start doing more regular chats about the news. We're both avid news fanatics, clean tech news fanatics, EV Tesla news fanatics, and we've both been following this industry for many years. About a decade, I would say, probably both of us. But Paul was earlier to get an electric car. I was car free when Paul got his Nissan Leaf back in 2000. What was it?
2011.
2011. So yeah, so you've actually been driving electric for almost a decade, and now have a Tesla Model 3 long range. I have Tesla Model 3 center range plus. So we always bring that perspective into these discussions about EVs and Tesla. So today we're all Tesla. Maybe every episode is all Tesla. I don't know. We'll see what we do. But the first story today from Paul is talking about the changes that Tesla has made to its various models. Why don't you give us a start on that?
Yeah, I was going to tell you, I actually had a 10-year background. I was totally obsessed with cars from about age 10 to age 20. And then I got totally obsessed with computers and finance because I'm a software engineer. And what's been great about Tesla is it lets my obsession with computers and finance and autos all come together, because you can look at Tesla from all three of those aspects. So yeah, on the Model S changes that were announced this week, the price is $69,420. I thought those were great numbers, and so we get a lot of publicity and a lot of articles about them. But on the downside, who really can afford or can't afford a $72,000 car, and now it's $69,000 and they can suddenly make the payment? What's your thought?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, that's a good way to put it. It's I don't really know who it changes anything for. It's interesting PR because the number games, 69,420. But yeah, and I think there's just there's so many of almost all of Tesla's sales these days are the Model 3 and Model Y. So when they change things about the S and X now, it's not like it was in the past when they were the only Tesla options. I just, I have a harder time getting excited about them because I know that they're a niche portion of the sales, and the real stuff is happening with the Model 3 and Y.
I think it is good that Elon announced it in a tweet versus how the Model 3 changes came by a configurator change, because had it just happened this morning like the other changes, it wouldn't have even got noticed. So it was important that it came, I think, a day earlier.
Yeah, and I still wonder how much it's noticed outside of like a very specific group of Tesla fanatics, but
yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a big group too. I mean, not there's a small group, but I mean, I don't know if it's penetrating any of these outsiders who I see around myself in Florida who are not really into Tesla, don't know Tesla that well. I don't think it's going outside of the Tesla bubble to reach people much, but I don't know.
Well, getting into the Model 3, they seem to add a few miles range to all their different ones. They added 31 miles to the long range, up to 353. They added 13 miles to the standard range and 16 miles to the performance. They added the power lift gate. They improved the performance of both the long range and the performance by either 0.1 or 0.2. I could make the same comment. I don't think there were too many that would be put over the edge and saying, nope, I wasn't considering the Model 3 at all, and these are the things that make the difference. But it's more of a continual improvement that for competitors, I think it's just going to make it tougher and tougher for them to catch up because they hadn't even caught up to the Model 3 before. And wow, it just keeps getting more range and more
Yeah,
performance.
yeah. I meant to put that in my article that I don't think it's about demand. Like some people are going to assume it's about trying to stimulate more demand. I think it's what we know is Tesla improves little things here and there consistently in all of the cars, and they, sometimes they have they package them together for ease of production changes or something, or just I don't know, but I don't think it's about trying to stimulate more demand as much as it's just constantly improving. What do you think on the there has been a range increase for all of the models, and that seems to come from using the heat pump primarily, and which the Model Y was the only one to have initially. But there's also, as you said, some modest acceleration improvement in all the different trims of the Model 3. Do you think that's coming from the heat pump change, that it's like lighter or something, or some other change?
No, I think it's got to be either a motor improvement or more likely, obviously on the long range, we already knew in software they were selling an update. They, just as they continue to get more experience with the batteries, they know how far they can push them and how much they can draw at various times, is what I think.
And do you think that so there were also trim changes? The chrome handles instead of are now are black, and the center console is not this shiny, glossy black plastic, but rather a different kind of center console that's different material. What do you think drove those changes? Do you think it was people complaining about things getting the fingerprints all over them, or you think it was some other reason driving
Well,
those?
I do think a lot of reviewers had complained that the piano black got a lot of fingerprints. I don't know if you noticed it has a heated steering wheel, which isn't important in Florida, but I had heard a lot of reviews that thought that was kind of a miss. A lot of people. I was actually going to ask you about your daughters on the power lift gate. I mean, it isn't too big of a deal because I can just pull mine down. But do you think that'll make a difference that your daughters probably couldn't close the Model 3, and now as they're older, you'll let them do that, or?
Well, yeah, they're not old enough yet to mess with it anyway. They're 4 and 6, and sort of just don't touch it, leave it. I'll get it. But it was one of my biggest wishes was having a power trunk, but I'm not clear. Does it close as well, or just open automatically? Does it do automatic
Oh, I
closing?
don't know, but since the Model Y does both, doesn't it? I would think it would do both.
I think so. I think so, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a major. I mean, with 2 little kids, this is like, we, especially this day of this kind of grocery shopping we do in the coronavirus era is more less frequent and more stuff. So
Mhm.
we, it's just always seems like getting a ton of stuff out of the trunk while trying to manage 2 little kids to make sure they don't run into the street or something, and then don't are crying about something. So it's often a pain in the butt to try to have to close the trunk with my
Yeah.
elbow or something. So this would be one of the top reasons I would want to like trade in, get an update, whatever.
But if you
I think
traded in, you probably would go to the Y anyway, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, I'm very curious. I thought for sure before I saw the Y that I would. And then I walked around a Y at a supercharger, and I was like, God, it just doesn't feel like I like the car, the lower sporty feel of the Model 3. But now every time I see Model Y, and I see them every day here, I'm sure you see them every day up there too. Oh, I don't know if you don't drive around as much, perhaps,
I don't
but
drive around much, so I don't actually see
yeah.
them very much.
No, I'm seeing them every day. I see a couple every day, I would say, and at least, and they look really good. They look great from all angles and all sides. So I think I need to do a test drive for a few days or a week and see how I feel. but I'm not really inclined to update anyway. I'd rather just stick with what I have. But
Yeah,
but a very
it's not good to change cars too often if you can talk yourself out of the new car. It's always a good financial decision.
yeah. The one the one thing I'm eager to do, and I imagine you are as well, is when the Mustang Mach-E comes out, I'm really eager to test drive it, and I'm waiting to test drive the Model Y until I can do them like back to back, so that I can have a
Ah,
better comparison of the Model Y and the Mach-E. What do you think about that? do,
well,
do, do
I
you think
guess
it's do you think it's worth doing?
you and I are both mathematicians, and we know the distributive property. A equals B and B equals C means A equals C. So what I mean by that is I test drove the Model Y and I drove my Model 3 to it, and I said, wow, there's basically no difference. It drives just like the 3. So I won't have to do them back to back. If I drive the 3 to the place
So
I drive the Mach-E.
you really didn't notice. I mean, all the extra space, of course, but you really didn't notice like a drive difference.
Well, what I'm saying is there's far more drive difference between the Model 3 Performance, the Model 3 Long Range, the Model 3 All-Wheel Drive, and the Model 3 Standard Range Plus. See, there's a huge variance right there.
Yeah,
In
right.
acceleration and handling, they're all pretty similar. So the Model Y is just basically on that same scale. And so it's just another, I mean, all of those cars feel about the same. I realize if I took them on a track at a specific 100 miles an hour, I could tell the difference. But
Yeah, that's a good
even
point.
taking them on sharp corners and flooring it, and they feel reasonably similar.
And that's been the pleasant surprise of a lot of people, is that the Model Y doesn't feel like an SUV. It still drives almost like the Model 3, despite being bigger, higher, and all that, because of the low center of gravity, Tesla engineering, everything. But let's jump to one thing that separates these models would be potentially the cost. You have second on our list the Consumer Reports report on lower total cost of ownership of electric vehicles. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I do. And this will actually get us a little into non-Tesla, which I'm sure is fine. I seem to be, and I noticed there were some articles by Martin kind of talking about how many manufacturers are maybe misusing plug-in hybrids. I've been more of a fan of the plug-in hybrids, and one of the things that I really liked about that Consumer Report study, in addition to it was very well footnoted, so it gave great references that I can use to do further research, is that it confirmed what I had found with plug-in hybrids, in that they have less frequent oil changes, less frequent maintenance. And what I'd really love to know, and I don't know if anybody's done research on this, is if you have a plug-in hybrid and the engine's only running half the time, does that mean that plug-in hybrid will last twice as long?
Yeah, well, it's a interesting question. I think Martin laid it out in an article last night pretty well, is that initially people who bought plug-in hybrids were EV enthusiasts who were eager to use the electric range, and we saw data showing that. And then in Europe, you had the problem, they started incentivizing them a great deal, and a lot of people bought them in Europe without like a garage, like a lot of people have on-street parking in Europe, and didn't charge them. So they drove them around not charging them. Very high number of them did this, apparently. And apparently this has also been found in California to be a problem as well, where you got a carpool lane benefit from getting a plug-in hybrid, but apparently a lot of people also just decided eventually, at some point in the market evolution, started buying them without planning to charge them. So I don't know. It's a controversial issue. I always, I think if it works for a person, great, but I don't think I don't think it should be incentivized by government regulations and that kind of thing.
Well, I don't think it should be incentivized as much as it is. That is for sure. I actually do have experience in the plug-in hybrids. I've owned two C-Maxes, and the first one had 20 miles of range, and the second one, even though it was the same model, only had 13 miles of range. So there must be some, but it's a little bit weird. It was 13 when I bought it 4 years ago, and my daughter has it now, and it's still 13. So whatever happened to the battery, it's at least held at 13.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think overall is a lot of automakers gave a big buffer with their batteries, so they didn't, like the Volt also, I think almost didn't lose much range for people who had the Volt for a long time. But yeah, well, getting back to the cost of ownership, what else on that topic? I mean, they basically confirmed what we had found in many total cost of ownership, 5-year cost of ownership analyses we had done. They had the same kind of average or general assumption with regards to thousands of dollars of savings from driving electric.
Correct. Well, what was great about that was that they have hundreds of thousands of readers, and I can't remember how many electric cars. I think they only had hundreds of electric cars, but it was just far more scientific than the research we were able to do because of their vast resources.
Yeah,
the one other point
because they were using data from their members or whatever, right?
Right. I mean, they have done a member survey for at least 40 years. So it's always good when you can put research into a long time series versus just coming up with it. The research we did was by looking at what it says in the owner's manuals and what we think it will cost to get this, and that's fine for maintenance. For repairs, it's just really tough to know because there's so much randomness in repairs.
Yeah, and what you said also is really important. They provide a lot of authority to the story for people who might have never seen CleanTechnica, but consumer reports well. I think it's a very well trusted, independent.
On the plug-in hybrids, I did want to mention one other thing. When you have a real low range, replace most of your gas use. My sister has one and uses very little gas.
You dropped out of the recording for a moment, which means your internet cut off or was something happened on your side. So I heard when you have a real low range and then you disappeared.
Okay, I said when you have a real low range, there isn't much incentive to plug it in, because if I have a 13-mile range and I'm going somewhere and the charger is 2 miles out of the way from my normal trip, then I'm going 2 miles there and then 2 miles back to get to where I was going to be. I've lost 4 of my 13 miles that I would get on that. It just is hardly worth plugging in. And maybe I'll save 20 cents on gas. The main reason I would plug in my C-Max wasn't really to save any money. It's just the car drives better when it's on electric because, of course, it's quiet and instant acceleration.
Yeah, that's one of the things that surprised me to hear, and I didn't believe for a long time until seeing research on it that people weren't plugging them in. I honestly, people were complaining that people don't plug them in. I was like, that's probably like 1 or 2 stories you heard. And now there's a lot of data showing that they didn't, but
okay, but we can
understand that because one, you save money anyway, but apparently in Europe, Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so Model Y sales destroying the competition.
Yeah, I have not seen a lot of articles on this, but and of course it's always tough to get accurate Model Y figures, but I basically took a combination of Troy Treslike's uh, third quarter projections, which are 27,335 sales for the Model Y, US only, and compared it to good car, bad car, a number of categories. And good car, bad car has them at 35,000, but I think that's probably less accurate. Although I do think good car, bad car is relatively accurate on other brands because I think they have more traditional reporting.
Yeah, they get it. They get official data for the others, so it should all be accurate. There's one brand that has stopped giving press releases with official sales data, and that's Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
And they good car, bad car is still presenting sales data from them. So I don't know if they're getting that via email or something, but
I
their data
think
should be
they
good, and their estimate is probably based on themselves on Teslas. I think.
I think they
Troy does the
are
hard work on this.
because in this whole, I'm sure you know about the Tesla not having a press department. I heard another writer say something. Well, any other automaker, I would just ask their press department if I'm missing something, and they'll email me it in an hour or whatever, and basically saying how good the other auto manufacturers' press departments are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we weren't getting responses for months, so we sort of knew there was nothing going on. Of course, we get responses from Elon on some things, luckily, but it's always like you can't get the specific US on model by model basis. And I think people generally know now that Troy does an amazing job on this. So you can look at his numbers and modify your assumption based on something if you wish. But I think that's how they're doing it, because all their other data is official data. So it's not like they're doing something.
So the
Fancy.
the only
They're just
problem
really good
is
at collecting and reporting.
I don't think good car, bad car necessarily puts the Model Y always in the right class. They actually put the Model Y in the small luxury SUVs, and they put the Model 3 in the midsize, where I actually would do the opposite. I would put the Model Y in the midsize, and I put the Model 3 in the compacts. But you can just, so talking about the Model Y, it's essentially doing what the Model 3 did a couple years ago. With the exception that when the Model 3 took so many sales from the BMW 3 Series, the Audi, and the Mercedes C-Class, nobody really paid attention because they said, oh, well, sedans are dying anyway. So those three manufacturers could say, well, we're just shifting to our crossovers, which is kind of partially true also. But now we're talking about the crossovers. And Tesla totally outsells, not only the BMW, Audi, and Mercedes, but Lexus is kind of the big dog in crossovers, even more than the three Germans. And it's not as dominant as the Model 3 is, but it hasn't gotten there yet. And but maybe it won't get as dominant as the Model 3 is because the other manufacturers care about the crossover more than they care about the sedan segment, so they'll fight back harder.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hadn't dug in. I didn't know you had looked at these numbers yet. I just finished my big quarterly U.S. auto industry sales report this week, and I have it open to do these these specific segments. So I've been really eager to dive in. I'm learning as I listen to you what's going on, but very curious to look more closely.
So you'll remember we always wondered if the Model 3 would, although it was the best-selling in dollar volume car, at its peak when there were more tax incentives and there was still some pent-up demand, it never got to the #1 U.S. by number of cars, but it sure got close. And
I forget. Yeah.
I don't think the Model Y will get close. One is that people have to decide whether to get a Model Y or a Model 3, where when the Model 3 was there, it got a lot of Model Y buyers that just, settled for the Model 3. Because the volumes that the RAV4 are 3 times what the Model Y is, and I don't see Tesla, though sales will go up some when they come out with the lower priced model, but I don't see them overtaking the RAV4.
Yeah, I mean, you have two issues. One is production capacity, so we don't really know. We don't know what the production, what the sales demand would be if they had as much production as they could have, and they really pushed it. But we also don't see we don't see people having to wait very long to get one. So that doesn't imply that there's a gigantic demand there's not a very bad backlog. But then it's a high up front. I mean, it's not a high up front price. It's not a Model X or Model S, but it's still a pretty high upfront price. It's a pretty slim portion of the market that buys new cars at all, let alone buys new cars that start around that price. It's always like going to be a challenge. It's even if you look at lifetime cost of ownership, it's just very hard to compete with models that start at like 23,000 or something.
It does. I
Right.
think the RAV4 starts at. You think it? I thought it was.
I don't know what it starts.
I think it's 26, 27, but it is considerably less. But I would actually bring up, I guess, the COVID situation. I think the COVID situation means less people are giving their friends test rides in their Model Y. Yeah. So I think that, because that is a significant part of Tesla's sales force, is people giving their friends and family and coworkers rides in their cars. And that's got to be hurt by COVID.
And we also, I mean, the sort of upper portion of the market of the economy has done fine mostly. It's people have mostly not lost jobs and doing fine. But even with that, I think there's a kind of concern of risk. There's a sort of risk factor with the economy. You never know if it's going to crash, what that's going to mean for you, if there's going to be a big domino effect as things come down. So I think people are also hesitant to, I would assume, to make a new car purchase right now, even if they're doing fine so far. But who knows? That's a big, broad question. Well, that's 30 minutes, and might not be full 30. I'm not sure, but around 30 minutes, and I have to go get my daughter from school. So we'll start the next episode on the most interesting topic on your list, which was full self-driving. Where are we? Are we close? Are we not close? And I think as a software engineer for decades, I'm always eager to hear you talk about this topic. So that'll be fun. Thank you, Paul.
So you stopped recording?
Not yet, but I can't stop.